Her husband asked for a divorce, and her little daughter, Lily, looked up at the judge and said, "Your Honor, may I show you something my mom doesn't know about?" The judge nodded, and when the video played, the entire courtroom went silent. Everyone stared at Lily as she revealed a truth that even her mother hadn't known. Shocking, powerful, and impossible to ignore. "Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's family. May the Almighty bless every woman with a strength that shakes mountains, a dignity that no hardship can touch, and a heart so noble that entire families survive because of her love. Women are the protectors of generations, the healers of broken spirits, the makers of peace, the carriers of pain who still choose to give tenderness. They deserve not just respect, they deserve to be honored like queens, valued like treasures, and loved with every breath. May every woman's steps be guided with light, her nights filled with comfort, and her days overflow with blessings that lift her spirit higher and higher. May she receive the love she gives, the kindness she spreads, and the respect she has earned through every sacrifice. Women are not ordinary. They are God's greatest miracle on earth. If your heart is true, like the video, if your love is real, write, 'I am with Mr. Peter.'" The courtroom smelled of old wood and broken promises. Emily Lawrence sat rigid in her chair, hands folded so tightly in her lap that her fingernails left crescents in her palms. The wooden bench beneath her felt hard and unforgiving. Across the aisle, Michael Woodall looked every bit the concerned father. Charcoal suit pressed to perfection, expression carefully arranged into worry and righteous determination. His lawyer, an older white man with silver hair and expensive cufflinks, was mid-sentence, his voice smooth as whiskey. "Your Honor, my client seeks full custody because Ms. Lawrence has demonstrated a clear pattern of neglectful behavior over the past 6 months. She forgets to pack Lily's lunches, forcing her daughter to arrive at school hungry. She misses parent-teacher conferences despite multiple reminders. She left Lily waiting at school hours past closing on 2 occasions. Most concerning, she spends her days lost in confusion, wandering the house, unable to complete basic tasks, while my client works tirelessly to provide for this family." Emily's lawyer started to object, but Emily barely heard her. The words felt like knives. Neglectful, confused. The lies were delivered so smoothly that she almost believed them herself. Had she forgotten Lily's lunch last month? She couldn't remember clearly. Everything had been such a blur lately. The dizziness, the confusion, the terrifying way some morning she woke up not knowing what day it was. Michael's mother, Helen Woodall, took the stand next. She wore pearls and a lavender suit, her white hair styled in soft waves that made her look like everyone's favorite grandmother. Her voice trembled with emotion. "I love Emily like my own daughter," Helen said, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "But, Your Honor, I've watched my granddaughter suffer these past months. Last week, Lily showed up at our house in the same clothes she'd worn for 3 days. The poor child was hungry. She told me her mother had forgotten to go grocery shopping again, that there was nothing in the house to eat." The shame burned through Emily. That incident. She remembered it now, or thought she did. She'd meant to go shopping. She'd had a list. But somehow the day had disappeared, and when she'd opened the refrigerator that evening, it had been nearly empty. Lily had eaten cereal for dinner. Michael's sister took the stand after that, spinning more tales with tears streaming down her face. She described finding Emily wandering in her backyard in the middle of the night, confused about where she was. She talked about phone calls from Lily begging to stay at their house because her mother was having a bad day. The picture they painted was devastating. A mother so lost in cognitive decline that she could barely function, and a father desperately trying to save his daughter. Judge Warren, a stern-faced man in his 60s, listened with increasing sympathy toward Michael. Emily could see it in the way he nodded when Helen spoke, in the way his expression softened when Michael took the stand to describe his heartbreak over watching his wife deteriorate. "I still love Emily," Michael said, his voice breaking at exactly the right moment. "She's the mother of my daughter. But I can't stand by and watch Lily suffer because I'm too afraid to face the truth. Emily needs professional care. She needs help that I can't provide, while also ensuring Lily's safety. This custody petition breaks my heart, but my daughter comes first." Emily's heart was breaking too, but for different reasons. They were going to take Lily. The judge believed them. How could he not? They were so polished, so credible, with their matching testimonies and documented incidents. Emily looked like exactly what they claimed, a confused woman who couldn't defend herself coherently. Then a small voice cut through the courtroom. "Your Honor, may I show you something my mom doesn't know about?" Every head turned. Lily stood beside Emily's chair, her 11-year-old frame tiny but steady. She held a USB drive in her hands. Emily's breath caught. She'd never seen that drive before. Judge Warren frowned. "Young lady, this is highly irregular. We're in the middle of testimony." "Please," Lily said, her voice unwavering despite trembling hands. "My mom needs you to see this. Everyone needs to see this. It's evidence." Something in the child's tone made Judge Warren pause. He glanced at both lawyers. Michael's lawyer objected strenuously about improper procedure, lack of discovery, ambush tactics. But Judge Warren held up his hand. "I'm calling a recess. Ms. Barnes, Mr. Morrison, approach the bench with the child. We'll review whatever is on this device in my chambers before deciding how to proceed." The next hour felt like several lifetimes. Emily sat in the hallway, forbidden from entering while the lawyers and Lily reviewed the evidence. Her mind raced. What could Lily possibly have? What had she done? When the courtroom reconvened, the energy had shifted dramatically. Judge Warren's expression had transformed from sympathetic to granite hard. Michael's lawyer looked ill. Helen's face had gone pale. Michael's jaw was clenched so tightly the muscles stood out like cords. "This court is back in session," Judge Warren said coldly. "Ms. Barnes, I'm granting your emergency motion to present new evidence. The court has reviewed the materials and finds them potentially relevant. Mr. Morrison, your objections are noted. Bailiff, please set up the display." The large screen flickered to life. Emily's hands started shaking. The footage was grainy but clear. Security camera angle from Michael's office. The timestamp read several months back. Michael sat at his desk with Rachel, a woman from his company. They were kissing, passionate and familiar. The courtroom murmured. But the video didn't stop. Michael and Rachel pulled apart. Michael's voice came through clearly. "The doctor confirmed it yesterday. Early onset dementia, just like we planned. The diagnosis is official." Rachel laughed. "You're sure it's the pills causing her memory loss and not actual dementia?" "Positive," Michael replied casually. "Dr. Hollings confirmed that the medication we've put her on, the ones she thinks are treating dementia, actually contain drugs that mimic dementia symptoms. Confusion, memory loss, disorientation, all of it. She takes them every morning because she's terrified of losing her mind. She has no idea the pills are causing the symptoms she's trying to treat." Emily couldn't breathe. The medication. Every morning, Michael brought her pills, told her they'd help slow the disease. She'd been so grateful he'd been poisoning her. Rachel's voice continued, "And once you get custody?" "We liquidate everything," Michael said. "The house is worth over $1 million. With me as Lily's guardian, I'll have authority to access the trust. Close to $3 million total. Once custody is finalized, we stop her medication. She gradually clears up, but by then it's too late. She loses everything." The courtroom erupted. Another video played, Helen's living room. Helen sat with Michael, Rachel, and another man. "The fake diagnosis is working brilliantly," Helen said, her voice crisp. "Emily's so trusting she never sought a second opinion. We're giving her medication that causes exactly the symptoms we need. In a few months, she'll be so impaired that no judge will question custody." The man spoke, Dr. Hollings. "I've documented her decline thoroughly. For the fee you're paying, I'll testify to whatever you need. No court will question a neurologist. Once Michael has custody, Helen continued, we sell the house immediately. The inheritance requires Michael's signature as guardian. We liquidate everything, and by the time Emily's clarity returns, everything will be gone. She'll have no assets, no custody, no leverage. Rachel leaned forward. And Lily? Helen's smile was cruel. Boarding school in Maine, expensive, far away. Lily will be out of our lives but technically under custody, which matters for accessing assets. By 18, most of the money will be redirected. The video ended. Silence filled the courtroom. Judge Warren's voice cut like ice. Bailiff, place Mr. Michael Woodall, Mrs. Helen Woodall, and Dr. Richard Hollings under immediate custody. Contact the district attorney. I want fraud charges, conspiracy charges, medical malpractice charges filed today. Ms. Barnes, I'm granting your client emergency full custody effective immediately. Mr. Woodall will not be granted custody under any circumstances. These proceedings are adjourned. Everything happened at once. Bailiffs moved toward Michael, who shot to his feet, composure shattering. Helen rose with icy dignity, but her hands shook. Dr. Hollings protested loudly about his reputation. Rachel tried to slip toward the exit, but an officer blocked her path. Michael lunged toward Lily, rage replacing his careful mask. You little bitch! You destroyed everything! Bailiffs grabbed his arms before he got close, forcing him backward as he screamed obscenities. Emily couldn't move, could barely breathe. The man she'd married had been destroying her mind, deliberately. For money. Lily climbed into Emily's lap, small arms wrapping around her mother's neck. I'm sorry, Mama. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I needed proof. I needed people to believe me. Emily held her daughter and shook violently. As bailiffs led Michael and Helen away, Michael still screaming, Helen silent but radiating hatred, Emily tried to process what had happened. Her daughter, her 11-year-old daughter, had just saved her life. Judge Warren's voice was gentle. Ms. Lawrence, I'm ordering an immediate independent medical evaluation. Based on what we've witnessed, I suspect your alleged dementia will disappear once proper medications are stopped. I'm also ordering protective services during criminal proceedings. Emily couldn't speak, could only nod, clutching Lily tighter. As they left through a side door to avoid reporters, Emily finally found her voice. Baby, how did you find those videos? Lily's answer was simple and devastating. I found Daddy's old phones in his desk drawer 2 weeks ago. They weren't locked. I watched the videos and knew they were planning to take you away from me. So I copied everything and waited until we were in court where the judge could see where they couldn't stop it. I waited until we were safe. 2 weeks. Lily had carried that weight alone, living with people plotting against her mother, pretending everything was normal. You saved us, baby, Emily whispered. You saved both of us. As they reached the car, Michael's voice echoed from behind them. This isn't over. You'll pay for this. But Lily stood tall beside her mother. The nightmare was ending. The truth was, finally, devastatingly free. Chapter 2. The girl who saw everything. Emily's living room felt different now, like a stage where a performance had been taking place without her knowledge. Every piece of furniture Michael had chosen suddenly looked sinister. Every family photo felt like a lie captured in a frame. She sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm afternoon, trying to stop shaking, trying to process everything that had exploded in that courtroom. Detective Keisha Bryant sat across from Emily in the armchair, her notepad open but her pen still, waiting patiently while Emily gathered herself. The detective was a black woman in her 40s with kind eyes, but a professional demeanor that suggested she'd seen terrible things and survived them. Lily perched between them on the coffee table, the 2 old phones and USB drive laid out like evidence of crimes Emily still couldn't fully comprehend. Monica Barnes stood near the window, keeping watch. She'd insisted on staying until police could arrange formal protection. "Ms. Lawrence," Detective Bryant said carefully, her voice kind but firm, "I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand the scope of what we're dealing with. What your daughter found isn't just evidence of infidelity or civil fraud. We're looking at conspiracy, medical malpractice, elder financial abuse, attempted theft through fraud, and possibly more charges as we investigate. This is serious." The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. Medical malpractice, conspiracy. These were things that happened on television crime shows, not to regular people trying to raise their daughters and live decent lives. "How long?" Emily's voice came out raspy, broken. "How long was this happening?" Lily's small hands twisted together, her brave courtroom composure cracking now that they were safe. "Mama, the videos on Daddy's phones go back years. Some are from before he even married you." Emily's world tilted further. "Before he married me?" Detective Bryant nodded grimly. "Lily, can you walk us through exactly what you found? Start from the beginning. Take your time." Lily took a shaky breath, looking younger than her 11 years, despite the maturity she'd shown in court. 2 weeks ago, I came home from school and my tablet was dead. I needed to charge it for homework. I went into Daddy's office to use his charger because mine was lost. When I opened his desk drawer, I saw 2 old phones at the very bottom, underneath papers and folders. She looked at her mother apologetically. "I know I shouldn't have snooped. Kids aren't supposed to go through their parents' things. But something about how they were hidden made me curious." Daddy had been acting really strange for months, quiet phone calls in the garage, closing his laptop fast whenever I walked in, whispering with Grandma Helen when they thought I couldn't hear, so I picked up one of the phones and turned it on. "Were they password protected?" Detective Bryant asked, making notes. "No, they were really old phones and they just turned on. The first one had videos saved in the photo gallery, lots of them. At first I didn't understand what I was watching. It looked like security camera footage from different rooms, Daddy's office, Grandma Helen's house, some rooms I didn't recognize. Lily's voice grew quieter, younger. Then I watched one where Daddy and that woman Rachel were together, kissing and stuff, and I realized Daddy was cheating on you, but then they started talking and I heard them discussing making you sick on purpose. I heard them talking about taking me away and selling our house and stealing money, and I got really scared." Emily pulled Lily close, feeling her daughter's small body trembling. "Why didn't you tell me right away, baby?" Tears streamed down Lily's face now. "Because I remembered what Dr. Osei told me. Last year, when kids at school were bullying another girl and teachers didn't believe her, Dr. Osei said that sometimes adults don't believe kids, especially when we're accusing other adults of bad things. She said if I ever needed to report something serious, I should have evidence, proof that couldn't be denied. She said kids need to be smarter than adults sometimes, need to wait for the right moment to show proof where people who can help will actually see it." Detective Bryant's expression showed sadness and professional interest. "Dr. Osei is your school counselor?" "Yes. She's really nice. She helps kids when they're having problems. When I found those videos, I remembered what she taught me. So I took Daddy's phones to my room and watched everything. There were so many videos, hours and hours. Daddy and Grandma Helen planning how to make you sick. That doctor explaining how medicines would mess up your brain. Rachel talking about money. Grandma Helen discussing sending me to boarding school." Emily's hands clenched into fists. Boarding school. They'd planned to send Lily away, to separate them permanently, all for money. "I watched every single video," Lily continued, her voice steadier now, fueled by remembered determination. "It took me 3 days because I had to watch them in secret, late at night when Daddy thought I was sleeping. The more I watched, the more scared I got. But I also got smarter. I found a USB drive in my desk from some school event. I copied all the most important videos, the ones showing them planning everything, talking about making you sick and stealing our house." Detective Bryant leaned forward. "That was smart thinking, Lily. Creating a backup is exactly what we tell adults to do. Why didn't you give the evidence to your mother right away?" Lily looked at Emily with eyes far too old for 11. "Because you were already so sick. You were confused all the time, forgetting things, getting dizzy. I was scared you wouldn't understand, or you'd confront Daddy before we had help, or he'd convince you I was lying. I needed to wait until we were somewhere safe, where someone with authority could actually help." "The custody hearing," Detective Bryant said. "The custody hearing," Lily confirmed. "I knew there'd be a judge there, and lawyers, and official people who could stop them. I knew if I showed the videos in front of the judge, Daddy couldn't delete them, or claim they didn't exist, or hurt you before anyone could stop him. So I kept the USB drive in my backpack every day and waited for the right moment." Detective Bryant's voice was gentle. "That must have been very difficult, living in the same house with people who were planning to hurt your mother." Lily nodded, tears streaming freely. "It was the scariest 2 weeks of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal. I had to act like I didn't know. Every day I was terrified they'd find out, that they'd hurt you before I could show the judge. But I had to wait. Dr. Osi taught me that kids need proof when accusing adults, that we have to be smarter and wait for the right moment. So that's what I did." Emily was crying now, huge gasping sobs. "Baby, that's too much. No child should have to carry that." "I had to," Lily said simply, "because you couldn't. You were too sick to fight for yourself. So I had to fight for both of us." Detective Bryant gave them a moment, then gently brought the conversation back. "Lily, I need to understand the timeline. You said the videos go back years?" Lily nodded and picked up one of the old phones, navigating with the ease of a child raised with technology. "The oldest one is from 7 years ago. It shows Grandma Helen and Daddy talking about how to trick you into marrying him." Emily's blood ran cold. "What?" "Should I play it?" Lily asked Detective Bryant, who nodded. The video filled the detective's tablet screen. It showed Helen's living room, clearly from a security camera. Helen sat on her sofa with Michael, who looked younger, less polished. Helen's voice came through. "Emily Lawrence is perfect, Michael. Her mother just died, leaving her with substantial assets. The house alone is worth over $1 million, and there's at least $2 million more in accounts. Emily's vulnerable right now, grieving, alone, desperate for stability. She has a young daughter with no father in the picture. She's exactly what we've been looking for." Emily felt punched. "Mark." Helen had called her a mark. Michael's voice. "What's my approach?" "Sympathy and stability," Helen instructed. "Emily's traumatized by her mother's death. She's a single mother struggling. You'll present yourself as understanding, mention your father's death when you were young, how you know what it's like to grieve. Show interest in her daughter. Be the stable presence she's desperate for. Court her quickly while she's vulnerable. Marriage within 6 months. And then?" Helen's smile was visible on the grainy footage. "Then we wait. Let her settle in, trust you completely. We'll monitor her finances, position ourselves to access her assets. In a few years, when the time is right, we'll manufacture a crisis. The specifics don't matter yet. Substance abuse, mental illness, something that makes her look unfit. You'll get custody, which grants access to manage assets. We liquidate everything quickly, and by the time Emily realizes what happened, it's too late." "And if she fights?" "She won't be able to," Helen said confidently. "We'll have destroyed her credibility first. No one believes a woman declared mentally unfit. By the time we're done, Emily won't know which way is up. The beauty is she'll probably blame herself, agree her daughter deserves better. The guilt will break her." The video ended. Emily couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 7 years ago. Before Michael had even approached her at that grief support group, before their first date, before the wedding where he'd promised to love her. All of it, every single moment, planned. There's more, Lily said quietly. Videos showing Daddy meeting you for the first time, but he was wearing a hidden camera. Videos of him reporting back to Grandma about your dates, about how the manipulation was going. Videos of them celebrating when you agreed to marry him. Emily stood abruptly, stumbled to the bathroom, and vomited. Her entire marriage had been a lie, not just recent months, the entire relationship from day one. Michael had studied her like homework. Helen had selected her like meat at a butcher's counter. When she returned, Detective Bryant was reviewing more videos, taking careful notes. The detective looked up with compassion and anger warring in her expression. Ms. Lawrence, what your daughter found is more than we initially realized. This isn't just fraud and medical malpractice. This is a pattern of predatory behavior going back years, carefully planned and executed. Michael and Helen Woodall are career criminals who've built their lifestyle around identifying and exploiting vulnerable people. How many others? Emily asked, her voice hollow. We won't know until we investigate thoroughly. But based on what I've seen, you're not the first woman Helen Woodall has targeted. Monica Barnes spoke from the window. Emily, with this evidence, we have them completely. No lawyer can spin this away. They filmed themselves conspiring. They documented their own fraud. They handed us everything we need. I want them to pay, Emily said suddenly, her voice stronger, for everything. I want them to face every consequence. And I want to make sure they never do this to anyone else. Detective Bryant nodded approvingly. That's the right mindset. Now I need you to answer questions about your medical treatment, about Dr. Hollings, about the medication. For the next 2 hours, Emily answered questions as thoroughly as her foggy mind allowed. Dr. Hollings had diagnosed her 6 months ago. The diagnosis had terrified her, losing her mind, forgetting Lily. Dr. Hollings had prescribed medication to slow progression. Michael had been so supportive, bringing her pills every morning, holding her when she cried. Every morning, for 6 months, deliberately destroying her. After Detective Bryant left with promises of protection and medical appointments, Emily sat with Lily in the quiet. Outside, a police car was parked, protection assigned by Judge Warren. Mama, Lily said quietly, are you mad at me for not telling you sooner? Emily pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. No, baby. You did exactly what you needed to do. You were smarter and braver than any adult could have been. You saved us both. I was so scared, Lily whispered. Every day for 2 weeks, terrified. Scared Daddy would find out, scared he'd hurt you before I could show the judge. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I just kept waiting, kept hiding that USB drive, kept pretending everything was normal. Emily rocked her daughter, both crying now. You never have to carry anything like that alone again. Never. I promise, baby. We're safe now. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her phone sat on the nightstand, deliberately turned off. Michael's family was already trying to contact her, leaving voicemails claiming misunderstandings. Emily didn't care about their destruction. She cared that her daughter, at 11 years old, had been forced to become an investigator because the adults failed her. Tomorrow, she'd start rebuilding. She'd see the new neurologist. She'd meet with prosecutors. She'd figure out how to put her life back together. Tonight, she'd just hold her daughter and try to remember who she'd been before Michael Woodall had selected her as a mark. But one thought burned bright. Lily had proven that victims could fight back, that children could be heroes, that evidence and courage could defeat predators. If an 11-year-old could bring down an entire conspiracy, then Emily could damn sure rebuild her life from its ashes. Chapter 3. The Recovery. Dr. Nina Patel's office was nothing like Dr. Hollings's sterile, intimidating space. It was warm, filled with plants, artwork from India, and comfortable furniture that invited relaxation. Dr. Patel herself was a woman in her mid-50s, with kind brown eyes behind stylish glasses and an accent that spoke of Mumbai and decades in America. This was the neurologist Detective Bryant, and the court had arranged. Someone with impeccable credentials and no connection to anyone involved in Emily's case. Ms. Lawrence, Dr. Patel said after 3 hours of comprehensive testing. "I'm going to tell you something that should bring you enormous relief. You do not have dementia. You don't have Alzheimer's. You don't have any degenerative cognitive disease. Your brain is structurally normal. What you have is drug-induced cognitive impairment, which is completely different with a completely different prognosis." Emily's hands shook as she gripped the chair arms. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Completely certain. Your MRI shows no brain atrophy, no structural damage, no markers for degenerative disease. Your cognitive testing shows impairment, yes, but the pattern is consistent with pharmaceutical interference, not disease. Your blood work confirms the presence of substances that would absolutely cause the symptoms you've been experiencing." Dr. Patel pulled up images on her computer. "Dr. Hollings claimed you had early-onset Alzheimer's based on these scans. But look, there's no hippocampal atrophy, no cortical atrophy, none of the characteristic markers we'd expect. Either he's incompetent or he deliberately misread these scans." "He deliberately lied," Emily said flatly. "I watched videos of him discussing it." Dr. Patel's jaw tightened. "What he did constitutes one of the most egregious violations of medical ethics I've encountered. He actively harmed a patient for money. His license will be revoked, and he should face criminal charges. He was arrested along with my husband and mother-in-law." "Good." Dr. Patel's expression softened. "Now, let's talk about recovery. You stopped the medication after the hearing." "That same day, I threw out every pill bottle." "Excellent. Drug-induced cognitive impairment is usually reversible. However, recovery isn't instant. You've been taking this medication for 6 months. It'll take time for your system to clear and your brain to recover normal function." Dr. Patel pulled out a chart. "In the first few weeks, you'll experience withdrawal symptoms, headaches, mood swings, anxiety, continued confusion. These may get worse before they get better, but you'll have moments of clarity that become more frequent. By the end of the first month, you should notice significant improvement. By 3 months, most patients recover full cognitive function. By 6 months, you should be completely back to baseline." "6 months," Emily repeated, trying not to feel discouraged. "I know it seems long, but your brain has been systematically attacked for half a year. It needs time to heal. The fact that you're already feeling clearer is an excellent sign." Dr. Patel prescribed legitimate medications, supplements to support brain health, medication for withdrawal symptoms, sleep aids. She also referred Emily to Dr. Yolanda Osei for therapy. "Ms. Lawrence, what was done to you constitutes torture. Having your cognitive function deliberately destroyed, being made to doubt your own mind, this is profound trauma. Your brain will heal from the drugs, but you'll need help healing from the psychological impact." Emily accepted the referral. As she left, she felt something she hadn't felt in months: genuine hope. She wasn't magically cured. Recovery would take time, but she would recover. Dr. Osei, the therapist, was the same counselor from Lily's school who'd unknowingly prepared Lily to document evidence. When Emily called, Dr. Osei's voice was warm and understanding. "I heard about what happened. Your daughter is extraordinary. I'm honored to work with both you and Lily if you're comfortable with that." Over the following weeks, Emily's life became a careful routine. Twice weekly therapy with Dr. Osei, weekly appointments with Dr. Patel, daily exercises for cognitive recovery. The withdrawal symptoms hit hard: crushing headaches, mood swings, confusion that was sometimes worse than before. But moments of clarity became more frequent. 3 weeks after the hearing, a letter arrived from a law office. Emily opened it carefully, expecting some legal attack, but instead found something unexpected. The letter was from Fatima Webb, her mother's attorney. Her mother had suspected Helen was stealing and had retained Fatima with specific instructions to contact Emily only if the Woodalls moved against her directly. Recent news coverage had triggered those instructions. Emily met Fatima in her downtown office. The attorney was a black woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see through pretense. "Your mother was my dearest friend for 40 years, Fatima began. She suspected Helen was stealing from her estate during her final illness, but lacked proof before she died. She asked me to document everything and be prepared to act if anything happened to you." Fatima opened a thick file. "Your mother set up her estate in layers. The trust Helen managed contained about 300,000. Significant, yes, but a fraction of the total. Your mother suspected Helen would steal from any account she accessed, so she created that trust as bait." Emily's head spun. "I don't understand." "Your mother wanted to see if Helen was trustworthy. If Helen proved honest, eventually the full estate would have been disclosed. If Helen stole—" Fatima gestured to the files. "Did she steal?" "Extensively. Over $200,000 through unauthorized transfers and false expense claims. I've documented every fraudulent transaction." Fatima pulled out another document. "But that trust was only part of your mother's estate. The bulk, nearly $8 million, was placed in a separate trust that Helen never knew existed. A trust only you can access." Emily's vision blurred. 8 million. 8.2 million. Property holdings, investments, life insurance, all structured in a trust completely outside the Woodall's reach. They were targeting you for assets they believed you had. They never realized the bulk of your mother's wealth was protected. Emily couldn't process the number. She'd been terrified of losing her home while millions sat protected in accounts she hadn't known existed. "Why didn't my mother tell me?" "Because she needed you genuinely unaware. If you'd known about the hidden wealth, you might have acted differently, tipped off the Woodalls. Your mother wanted them to commit fully to their plan, to expose themselves completely." Fatima pulled out a final document, a letter in Grace Lawrence's handwriting. Emily's hands shook as she read her mother's words of protection, of faith, of love that transcended death. "Your mother also hired a private investigator," Fatima continued. "Isaac Martinez. He's been monitoring the Woodalls since your mother's death, documenting their activities, building evidence. She asked him to watch over you and be ready to help if they moved against you directly. Can I meet him?" "He's downstairs. I called him when you scheduled this appointment." Isaac Martinez wasn't what Emily expected. Instead of a gruff detective type, he was a Latino man in his mid-40s, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, with warm eyes and a gentle demeanor. "Ms. Lawrence," he said, shaking her hand, "your mother was an extraordinary person. She saved my little sister's life when we were kids." Isaac explained. His sister had been bullied so severely she'd tried to end her life. Emily's mother, her teacher, had intervened, gotten her real help, saved her life. "When your mother called 6 months before she died and said she was worried about Helen Woodall's influence, I agreed immediately to help. I've been investigating the Woodalls ever since, documenting their activities, building a case." Over 2 hours, Isaac showed Emily his investigation. The Woodalls had targeted at least 7 other women over 2 decades. Helen identified vulnerable people with assets, befriended them, then systematically stole from them. "I've contacted all the victims. They're willing to testify, to share their stories publicly. Combined with your daughter's evidence and financial forensics, we have something the Woodalls can't lawyer their way out of." Isaac explained his plan to create a documentary showing the pattern of abuse, featuring victim testimonies, expert analysis, and Lily's evidence, tying everything together. "The legal system will handle prosecution, but this documentary will create a permanent public record. Even if they plea down, the world will know exactly who they are." "How long until it's ready?" 3 to 6 months if I do it thoroughly, but I'll only do this with your full cooperation. This is your story. You decide how public it becomes." Emily thought about all the women Helen had destroyed, all the victims too frightened to speak up. "Do it. Build the case. Make the documentary. If it prevents even one other family from being targeted, it's worth it. Over following weeks, Emily visited Isaac's office regularly as his investigation deepened. She reviewed documents, provided information about her marriage, helped Isaac understand the timeline. Lily came sometimes, her sharp memory filling in details Emily's drugged mind had missed. One afternoon, Isaac introduced Emily to two previous victims, Denise Williams and Tanya Rodriguez. 3 women brought together by the same predators. "I blamed myself for years," Denise said quietly. "I thought I should have seen through Helen's lies. It wasn't until Isaac showed me the pattern that I started letting go of shame." Tanya nodded. "Michael was so convincing. When my father discovered the theft and paid Michael to leave, I was devastated. I thought I'd lost the love of my life. Hearing about what he did to you helped me understand the love was never real." The 3 women spent hours sharing stories, validating experiences. They were different backgrounds, different circumstances, but Helen and Michael had used the same playbook on all of them. After they left, Emily sat with Isaac. "I'll do it. The interview for the documentary. I'll tell my story on camera, not just for me, but for all the women they hurt. When you're ready, we'll schedule it. No rush. I want you feeling strong when we record." As Emily's cognitive function continued improving, as therapy helped her process trauma, as the criminal cases ground forward, Emily prepared to share her story publicly. She practiced with Dr. Osei, talking through what she wanted to say. "I don't want to be portrayed as just a victim," Emily told Dr. Osei. "I survived. Lily and I survived. We fought back and won. That's the story I want to tell." "That's exactly the story that needs to be told," Dr. Osei agreed. One evening, Lily asked if she could watch the interviews once finished. "I want to understand everything, Mama, not just the parts I saw." They discussed it with Dr. Osei, who agreed that eventually, with proper preparation, Lily should understand the full scope. "Not to scare you, but so you understand what you did, finding that evidence, was part of stopping people who'd been hurting others for years." As weeks became months and Emily's recovery continued, she found herself looking forward instead of backward. The Woodalls had taken months of her life. She wasn't giving them anything more. Isaac had shown her that justice wasn't just legal consequences, it was exposure, documentation, creating a record that couldn't be erased. It was transforming personal trauma into public awareness. The Woodalls had built their empire on silence. Emily was about to shatter that silence with truth spoken loudly enough that it couldn't be ignored. Chapter 4. The Unexpected Ally. The knock came on a grey Tuesday afternoon, 3 months after the courtroom revelation. Through the peephole, Emily saw a woman around her age standing on the porch, hands twisting nervously, looking like she might bolt. The face was familiar but took several seconds to place. Jasmine Carter, her childhood best friend who'd faded from Emily's life shortly after she'd married Michael. Emily opened the door cautiously, one hand on her phone. "Jasmine? Please don't close the door." Jasmine's voice cracked immediately, tears already streaming. "I know I have no right to be here, but I saw the news coverage and I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you 7 years ago." Emily's grip on her phone tightened. "What are you talking about?" "Helen Woodall paid me to introduce you to Michael." The words tumbled out desperately. "She paid me $50,000 to befriend you after your mother died, to introduce you to Michael, to make sure you trusted him. I'm so sorry. I was desperate and stupid, and I betrayed you for money." The ground tilted. Jasmine, her best friend, had been part of it. "You need to leave," Emily said coldly. "Right now. Please, let me explain. You took money to help someone target me." Emily's voice rose. "Someone you'd known since we were children." "My mother was dying." Jasmine's voice broke. "She had ovarian cancer. We couldn't afford treatment. Helen approached me at a fundraiser, heard me talking about needing help, made me an offer. She said Michael was a good man looking for genuine connection, that I'd be helping both of you while helping my mother. She made it sound harmless. I didn't know about the con. I swear. Emily's hand was on the door, ready to slam it. You expect me to believe you had no idea? I was naive and desperate, not innocent. I took money to manipulate my best friend. That's unforgivable. But Emily, I have evidence. Bank statements showing Helen's payments. Text messages discussing how to introduce you to Michael. Recordings of Helen coaching me on what to say. I kept everything because I didn't trust Helen. Emily stared at this woman who'd once been her closest friend. Why are you telling me this now? Because my mother died 2 years ago anyway. With her last breath, she made me promise to make things right with you. I was too ashamed, but when I saw the news, when I realized what Michael and Helen had done to you, when I understood what I'd helped enable. Emily, I have a daughter now, she's 4. When I look at her, I think about Lily, and I can't breathe. I need to make this right even if you never forgive me. Emily's mind raced. The evidence Jasmine claimed to have could be crucial, but accepting help from someone who'd betrayed her felt impossible. I need to make calls, Emily said. Stay here. She closed the door and immediately called Isaac and Detective Bryant. Within 30 minutes, both arrived, along with Monica Barnes. They brought Jasmine inside, sat her at Emily's kitchen table, recorded her statement. Jasmine explained Helen's approach at the fundraiser, the $50,000, the coaching Helen provided. She knew everything about you, Jasmine said miserably. Your mother's death, your vulnerability, your financial situation, what kind of man you'd find attractive. Helen had studied you. She gave me talking points, what to say about Michael's character, how to arrange meetings that seemed natural. Jasmine pulled out her phone, showing Detective Bryant evidence she'd preserved. Bank transfers from Helen. Text messages spanning months with Helen's instructions. Even recordings where Helen discussed strategy. One recording made Emily physically ill. Helen's voice, cultured and precise. Tell Emily that Michael reminds you of her mother, steady, kind, protective. That'll appeal to her grief. Present him as someone looking for genuine connection. Make him seem like exactly what she needs. Another recording from after Emily's wedding. The setup worked perfectly. Emily married Michael exactly as planned. She's so grateful she doesn't question anything. In a few years, we'll manufacture the crisis, take custody, liquidate everything. She's exactly the kind of weak, trusting woman who makes this easy. Emily listened to Helen dismiss her as weak, as easy prey. The rage that burned through her was cold and clarifying. Why did you keep all this? Detective Bryant asked. Insurance, Jasmine admitted. I didn't trust Helen. If things went wrong, I'd need proof I was just a tool, not a co-conspirator. I never imagined it would go this far. Monica Barnes took notes. This evidence is substantial. It establishes premeditation, shows Helen's recruitment, demonstrates sophistication. Combined with what Lily found and Isaac's investigation, this makes the case nearly airtight. After Isaac, Detective Bryant and Monica left with copies, Emily and Jasmine sat alone. I don't forgive you, Emily said firmly. I don't know if I ever will. You exploited our friendship when I was vulnerable. You helped predators gain access to me and my daughter. Your desperation doesn't erase what you did. Jasmine nodded, tears streaming. But, Emily continued, I believe you're sorry. I believe your guilt is real, and I'm taking your evidence because it will help ensure the Woodalls face maximum consequences. That's not forgiveness, that's pragmatism. I understand. You said you have a daughter. What's her name? Grace. I named her after your mother. I wanted to honor the woman whose daughter I betrayed. Emily's throat tightened. My mother would have wanted you to do the right thing, even when it was hard. I'm not there yet, but maybe someday. After Jasmine left, Emily called Dr. Ose and spent an hour processing. You're allowed to be angry and still use her evidence, Dr. Ose said. You're allowed to recognize her remorse without forgiving her betrayal. You can hold multiple truths simultaneously. That night, Emily explained to Lily as age-appropriately as possible. Someone I used to be friends with helped Daddy and Grandma Helen. She felt really bad and came to tell the truth and give us information. I'm not sure how I feel about her, but I'm taking the information because it helps us. Lily considered this seriously. Dr. Osei says people can change if they try. She says accepting help doesn't mean you forgive someone. It just means you're doing what's best for yourself. Is that what you're doing? Exactly that, baby. Over following weeks, Jasmine's evidence was incorporated into the criminal case. Prosecutors now had proof the conspiracy began before Michael and Emily met, that Helen recruited Confederates and planned methodically. It strengthened an already strong case into something virtually unbeatable. Isaac included Jasmine's recordings in the documentary with expert commentary about how predators recruit helpers, how they exploit desperate people, how conspiracy networks function. I was manipulated, yes, Jasmine said in her documentary interview, her face shown, her name used. But I also made choices. I chose money over friendship. Those were my decisions, and I have to live with them. If sharing my story helps others recognize when they're being recruited into something harmful, then at least some good comes from my terrible choices. Emily watched that footage with complicated feelings. Anger still burned when she thought about Jasmine's betrayal. But seeing Jasmine take full accountability meant something too. Several weeks later, Emily received a text. I started volunteering at a center that helps women escape financial abuse. I'm using what I learned to help others recognize signs, not to earn forgiveness, just to maybe prevent someone else from being hurt the way I helped hurt you. Emily showed the text to Dr. Osei in therapy. How does it make you feel? Complicated. Part of me is glad she's trying to do something good. Part of me is still angry. Part of me wonders if she's rehabilitating her image. All of it is true simultaneously. You don't have to reconcile contradictions, Dr. Osei said gently. You're allowed to feel multiple things about the same person. You can be glad she's helping others and still angry about what she did to you. Emily eventually responded, I'm glad you're doing something meaningful. That doesn't mean I'm ready to resume friendship, but I recognize the value. Jasmine's reply was immediate. I understand. Thank you for even acknowledging it. That's more than I deserve. As criminal cases moved toward trial, Emily found herself thinking about all the people in this story, villains, heroes, complicated mixtures of both. Lily, brave and good. Isaac, dedicated and trustworthy. Helen and Michael, thoroughly evil. Jasmine, something more complex. Emily learned something valuable. People weren't simple. Betrayal could coexist with genuine regret. Someone could harm you and still deserve some compassion for circumstances that led to their choices. Using their help didn't require forgiving their betrayal. She would never fully forgive Jasmine. Their friendship was broken beyond repair, but she could acknowledge Jasmine's remorse as genuine and use her evidence to protect others. These were complicated truths, uncomfortable and unresolved, but they were part of how Emily was navigating a world that had revealed itself far more complex and dangerous than she'd once believed. Chapter 5. The trial begins. 5 months after Lily's courtroom revelation, the criminal trial finally began. The courthouse was packed daily. Reporters, legal observers, victims of the Woodall's other schemes, people wanting to witness justice. Security had been increased after threatening motions from Helen's lawyer, and Emily had protective detail after receiving anonymous threats. The prosecution team was led by District Attorney Carmen Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s with a reputation for taking down white-collar criminals. She'd spent months building the case, incorporating Lily's evidence, Isaac's investigation, Jasmine's testimony, and evidence from other victims. Michael and Helen had separate lawyers, separate strategies. Michael's attorney played the corrupted from childhood angle, painting Michael as the product of Helen's toxic influence, barely capable of distinguishing right from wrong. Helen's attorney took the opposite approach, claiming Michael had manipulated his mother, that Helen was an unwitting dupe, that her age and grief made her vulnerable to manipulation. The contradictory defenses would have been amusing if they weren't so transparent. Both were throwing each other under the bus, each trying to save themselves. Jury selection had taken weeks. The defense challenged every potential juror who knew about the case through media coverage, which was nearly everyone. Eventually, a jury of 12+ alternates was seated, all having sworn they could judge fairly. The prosecution's opening statement was devastating. DA Rodriguez played portions of Lily's videos on courtroom screens, walked the jury through years of conspiracy, introduced the pattern of previous victims. Helen and Michael Woodall are not tragic figures, Rodriguez said, her voice ringing through the courtroom. They are not victims of circumstance. They are sophisticated criminals who targeted vulnerable women, gained their trust through elaborate deception, systematically stole from them, and destroyed their lives for profit. For 20 years, they operated with near impunity because they were careful, because victims were too traumatized to fight, because they had expensive lawyers and social connections. She turned to look directly at the defendants. Until Emily Lawrence and her daughter Lily. Until a brave 11-year-old girl understood that adults don't always believe children without proof. Until that child documented everything, waited for the perfect moment, and exposed these predators in a way they couldn't deny. The prosecution spent 3 weeks presenting evidence. Financial experts testified about elaborate money laundering. Previous victims took the stand describing how Helen befriended them, gained trust, stole money. Jasmine testified about her recruitment, taking full responsibility while explaining Helen's manipulation. Dr. Patel testified about Emily's medical condition, explaining definitively that Emily never had dementia, that her impairment was entirely drug-induced, that her recovery proved the diagnosis was fraudulent. Then Lily took the stand. Emily had been dreading this moment. Lily was now 12, having had a birthday during pre-trial proceedings. She'd grown taller, more confident, but Emily knew testifying would be enormous weight. Lily walked to the witness stand in a simple blue dress, looking small but determined. The courtroom went silent as she was sworn in. DA Rodriguez approached gently. "Lily, I know this is scary. You're very brave. I'm going to ask you questions about what you found. Take your time, okay?" "Okay," Lily said, her voice clear despite nervousness. "Can you tell the jury what you found in your father's desk?" Lily took a breath. "I found 2 old phones hidden at the bottom of the drawer. I turned them on and found videos showing my dad and grandma planning bad things." "What kind of bad things?" "They were planning how to make my mum sick on purpose, how to steal our house and my grandma's inheritance, how to take me away and send me to boarding school. They talked about making my mum so confused she couldn't fight back or protect me. How did those videos make you feel?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Scared, really scared. Because my mum was already getting sick and I realized they were doing it on purpose. I was scared they'd hurt her, scared they'd take me away, scared no one would believe me." "Why didn't you tell your mother right away?" Lily looked at Emily in the gallery. "Because my mum was too sick. The medicine was making her confused. I was scared she wouldn't understand, or she'd confront my dad before we had help, or he'd convince her I was lying. I needed to wait until we were somewhere safe." "That's why you waited until the custody hearing?" "Yes. I knew there'd be a judge and lawyers and people who could help. I knew if I showed the videos in front of the judge, they couldn't delete them, so I kept the USB drive in my backpack and waited." DA Rodriguez's voice was gentle. "That must have been very difficult." Lily nodded, tears streaming. "It was the scariest 2 weeks of my life. I had to pretend everything was normal. Every day I was terrified they'd find out, that they'd hurt my mom before I could show the judge, but I had to wait." The defense tried to undermine Lily during cross-examination, suggesting she'd misunderstood, that she'd been coached, that an 11-year-old couldn't understand complex concepts. but Lily held firm, calmly explaining what she'd found and why she'd waited. Michael's lawyer made a catastrophic mistake by pushing too hard, his voice taking an aggressive edge that made Lily visibly frightened. Judge Reeves, the stern woman presiding, intervened immediately. "Counselor, this witness is a child who has demonstrated extraordinary courage. If you cannot question her respectfully, I'll limit your cross-examination. Am I clear?" After Lily's testimony, Emily took the stand. She'd been preparing for months, working with DA Rodriguez and Dr. Osei. Rodriguez walked her through the timeline, how she'd met Michael at a grief support group, how their courtship moved quickly, how Helen presented herself as loving, then the emergence of symptoms, Dr. Holling's diagnosis. The medication supposedly treating dementia but actually causing it. "What was it like believing you were losing your mind?" Rodriguez asked. Emily's voice was steady, despite pain. "Terrifying. I thought I was becoming a burden to my daughter, that I was failing her. I forgot to pick her up from school, forgot to buy groceries, forgot conversations hours earlier. I would wake up not knowing what day it was. I thought I was disappearing piece by piece." And Michael presented himself as supportive. Very. He brought me medication every morning, held me when I cried. He was so attentive. I was grateful he was standing by me. I never imagined he was causing it. Defense attorneys tried to paint Emily as vindictive, but Dr. Patel's testimony had been too definitive. The medical evidence was clear. Michael took the stand against his lawyer's advice. "It was a disaster. I never wanted it to go this far," Michael said, voice carefully modulated to sound remorseful. "I was raised by a woman who taught me to view people as resources. By the time I met Emily, I'd been running cons for years. It was all I knew." "But the medical fraud," his lawyer prompted, "that went beyond your mother's influence, didn't it?" Michael's mask slipped. "That was necessary. Emily was stronger than my mother anticipated. She wasn't breaking the way she was supposed to. We needed a foolproof method to get custody. The medical route seemed cleanest." The prosecution pounced. "Mr. Woodall, you said Emily wasn't breaking the way she was supposed to. Can you explain?" Michael realized his mistake too late. "I meant the situation was complicated. You meant your plan to psychologically and medically destroy Emily Lawrence for financial gain wasn't working as efficiently as you'd hoped." Michael's lawyer objected, but damage was done. The jury had seen Michael's cold calculation, his view of Emily as a problem rather than a human being. Helen never took the stand. Her lawyer advised against it. Instead, the defense tried to paint her as tragic, a widow grieving, manipulated by her son, too old to understand. But the videos destroyed that narrative. There was nothing confused about Helen. She was sharp, calculating, running schemes with precision. The prosecution's final witness was Isaac. He presented his comprehensive investigation, showing the pattern spanning 2 decades, sophisticated money laundering, calculated targeting. His testimony, supported by hundreds of pages of documentation, painted a picture of organized criminal enterprise. Closing arguments took 2 days. The defense tried desperately to humanize Michael and Helen, to present them as flawed people rather than predators. Rodriguez's closing was powerful. "The defense wants you to believe this is about a dysfunctional family, but evidence shows something completely different. Career criminals who spent 20 years destroying vulnerable people for profit. They didn't make mistakes. They made choices, calculated, deliberate choices." She walked the jury through evidence once more. An 11-year-old child had to become an investigator because adults failed her. Lily Lawrence is a hero, but she shouldn't have had to be. Your verdict will tell other predators whether sophisticated schemes protect them from consequences. Choose justice. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Emily spent those days unable to eat, barely sleeping, cycling between hope and terror. On the afternoon of the 2nd day, word came that verdicts were reached. Emily, Lily, Isaac and Monica rushed to the courthouse. Judge Reeves took her seat. Has the jury reached verdicts? The foreperson stood. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find the defendant, Helen Woodall? Guilty, 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 every single charge. Helen sat motionless, face a mask of fury. Michael's verdicts came next, guilty on all counts. As bailiffs led them from the courtroom, Helen's composure shattered. She turned toward Emily, face twisted with hatred, and screamed, "This isn't over! You've destroyed my family!" But her voice was cut off as doors closed. Outside, Emily made a brief statement. Justice has been served. My daughter and I are safe. Our focus now is healing and making sure this never happens to anyone else. That evening, Emily, Lily, and Isaac gathered at Emily's home for quiet celebration. No champagne, just relief and gratitude. Is it really over? Lily asked. The trial is over, Emily confirmed. Sentencing comes next month, but yes, baby, they're convicted. Good, Lily said simply. I'm tired of being scared. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Chapter 6. The Sentences. 6 weeks later, sentencing day arrived. The courtroom was packed again as Judge Reeves prepared to impose sentences. Previous victims had submitted impact statements, dozens of them, describing devastation the Woodalls had caused. Emily had written a statement but chose to deliver it in person. She stood before the court, facing Helen and Michael one final time. Helen and Michael Woodall tried to steal my mind, Emily said, her voice clear. They conspired to drug me, to make me doubt my sanity, to separate me from my daughter so they could steal everything my mother left us. They viewed my grief as opportunity and my trust as weakness. They were calculating, methodical, and utterly without remorse. She looked directly at Helen. But they underestimated my daughter. They underestimated the strength of a child who loved her mother enough to carry impossible weight. They underestimated the power of truth and evidence. And they've lost everything. Their freedom, their reputation, their ability to ever hurt anyone again. Emily turned to Judge Reeves. I'm standing here because my daughter was braver than they were cruel, because good people helped when we needed it, because the system worked. I asked the court to impose maximum sentences, not for revenge, but to protect every potential future victim, to ensure Helen and Michael Woodall's criminal careers end here permanently. Judge Reeves's sentencing statement was lengthy and thorough. She detailed the scope of crimes, the number of victims, the sophisticated nature of schemes, the complete lack of remorse. Helen Woodall, Judge Reeves said, you spent 2 decades targeting vulnerable women, destroying their lives for financial gain. You recruited Confederates, corrupted medical professionals, showed no regard for human cost. You are a danger to society. This court sentences you to 30 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 20 years. 30 years. Helen would be in her late 80s before potential release. Michael Woodall, you were raised in a criminal environment, yes, but you are an adult who made conscious choices. You targeted Emily Lawrence specifically, spent 7 years manipulating her, conspired to medically abuse her, attempted to steal her child. This court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. As sentences were pronounced, Michael stared at the table, expressionless. Helen's hatred remained undimmed, eyes burning into Emily even as her freedom ended. After sentencing, Emily stood outside the courthouse with Isaac, Lily, Monica, and several previous victims. A strange feeling settled, not quite celebration, something more complex. How do you feel? Isaac asked quietly. Lighter, Emily said after considering. Like I've been carrying something impossibly heavy and finally set it down. The sentences won't undo what they did. But they matter. Denise Williams approached crying. Thank you. For fighting. For not giving up. For making sure they finally faced consequences. Joyce died before she could see this. But the rest of us. We've waited so long. Emily hugged her. We did this together. Every testimony, every piece of evidence, every moment of courage contributed. That night, after crowds dispersed, Emily sat with Lily in quiet. The house felt different, no longer a stage where performance took place, but just a home. Their home. "Mama," Lily said quietly, "are you still sad about what Daddy did?" Emily pulled Lily close, thinking carefully. "I'm sad about the time we lost, about trauma you experienced. I'm angry about what he tried to do. But I'm not sad about losing him specifically, because the person I thought I loved never existed. Michael was always a performance. So I'm not mourning the loss of a real person. I'm mourning the loss of the life I thought we had, which was always an illusion." "That makes sense," Lily said. "I don't miss him either. Is that bad?" "Not at all. You don't owe love or grief to someone who hurt you. You're allowed to feel relieved he's gone." They sat together processing everything they'd survived. Tomorrow, Emily would continue building the foundation. She'd keep working with Isaac on the documentary. She'd continue therapy, continue healing. But tonight, she just held her daughter and felt grateful for survival, for justice, for the chance to rebuild a life the Woodalls had tried to destroy. The trial was over. Sentences handed down, Woodalls imprisoned. This chapter was finally, definitively closed. Now came the harder work of building something new from what remained. Chapter 7. The Documentary. 3 months after sentencing, Isaac's documentary premiered at a major film festival. The Witness had been accepted into competition, and advance buzz suggested it would be one of the most talked-about documentaries of the year. Emily sat in the darkened theater with Lily beside her, Isaac on her other side, surrounded by festival attendees who had no idea they were sitting next to the documentary's subject. The screen went black. Then Lily's voice, calm and clear. "My name is Lily Lawrence. When I was 11 years old, I discovered that my father and grandmother were planning to destroy my mother's life for money. This is the story of what I found and what happened next." The documentary was 90 minutes of devastating, comprehensive truth. Isaac had structured it chronologically, starting with Helen's first confirmed victim from 2 decades ago, showing the pattern of predation, introducing each victim with dignity and compassion. Joyce Campbell appeared in old home videos, smiling and vibrant before Helen targeted her, then photographed years later looking hollow and defeated. Her daughter spoke tearfully about watching her mother blame herself for being stupid enough to trust Helen, about Joyce dying without ever seeing justice. Denise Williams gave her interview with quiet strength. "Helen befriended me when I was at my lowest point. She made me feel cared for, supported. I trusted her completely. By the time I realized she'd stolen everything, it was too late. I lost my home, my savings, my faith in my own judgment. I spent years blaming myself for being foolish. Hearing about Emily's case, learning I was part of a pattern, it helped me understand this wasn't my failure. This was Helen's crime." Tanya Rodriguez described her experience with Michael. "He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. When my father discovered Michael stealing from our family accounts, I was heartbroken. I thought I'd lost the love of my life. It took years to understand that the love was never real, that I'd been selected and studied and manipulated from day one." Then came Jasmine's segment. She sat in front of the camera, face shown, name used, taking full responsibility. "Helen Woodall paid me $50,000 to help her target my best friend. I was desperate. My mother was dying of cancer and we couldn't afford treatment. But desperation doesn't excuse what I did. I betrayed Emily when she was at her most vulnerable. I helped deliver her to predators. That guilt is something I'll carry for the rest of my life. I'm telling my story not to earn forgiveness, but to show how these criminals recruit helpers, how they exploit desperate people's vulnerabilities. If sharing what I did helps someone recognize when they're being recruited into something harmful, then at least some good comes from my terrible choices." The documentary showed Emily's story in excruciating detail. Michael's calculated courtship, the fake medical diagnosis, the systematic drugging, the custody battle designed to steal Lily. Dr. Patel provided expert commentary about medical fraud. Forensic accountants explained money laundering. Criminal psychologists analyzed predatory behavior patterns. Then came the footage Emily had recorded for the documentary, her full interview shot in Isaac's studio months after the trial. On screen, Emily spoke directly to the camera. Michael Woodall didn't fall in love with me and then gradually become corrupt. He selected me as a target before we ever met. Every moment of our relationship was calculated, every gesture of affection, every promise of support, every expression of love. He studied me like a homework assignment, learned my vulnerabilities, and exploited them systematically. The Emily on screen continued. But what Helen and Michael didn't understand is that targeting someone's kindness and trust doesn't make you powerful. It makes you pathetic. They spent years trying to destroy me, and in the end, my 11-year-old daughter outsmarted both of them with nothing but courage and a USB drive. That's not their triumph, that's their failure. The documentary's climax showed footage from the custody hearing, the moment Lily stood up with her evidence, Judge Warren's shock, Michael's arrest, Helen's rage. Isaac had obtained courtroom footage through legal channels, and seeing it edited together with context and expert commentary was overwhelming. The final section focused on recovery and prevention. Emily discussed founding the Grace Lawrence Center. Other victims described their healing journeys. Expert commentary provided guidance on recognizing financial predators, protecting yourself from manipulation, documenting abuse, seeking help. The documentary ended with a powerful sequence. Photos of Helen and Michael in prison uniforms contrasted with images of Emily and Lily thriving. Emily at the foundation helping clients, Lily volunteering with younger children, both of them laughing and clearly healing. The message was unmistakable. Victims could survive, predators could be stopped, justice could prevail. As credits rolled and lights came up, the theater erupted in applause. People stood, many crying, many turning to look at Emily once they realized she was there. Emily stood shakily, Lily beside her, as festival attendees gave them a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. The question and answer session afterward was emotional. People wanted to thank Emily for her courage. Other survivors wanted to share stories. Journalists wanted interviews. Film distributors wanted acquisition rights. "How do you feel watching your trauma presented publicly?" one audience member asked. Emily thought carefully. Vulnerable, definitely, but also empowered. When predators operate in darkness and silence, they thrive. Exposure is the antidote to their power. Yes, it's difficult having my worst experiences on public display, but if this documentary prevents even one person from being targeted the way I was, that discomfort is worth it. Another question. Lily, what do you want people to take away from your story? Lily stepped to the microphone, now 12 years old and growing into remarkable confidence. I want kids to know that even when adults don't believe you, even when you're scared, you can still be brave. You can document what's happening. You can wait for the right moment. You can tell the truth in ways that people have to listen. And I want people to understand that kids see things. We understand more than adults think we do. When something bad is happening, we know. We just need adults to listen when we try to tell them. The applause for Lily was deafening. Over the following months, The Witness secured distribution through a major streaming platform and was scheduled for broadcast on a cable network. It won festival awards, generated extensive media coverage, and most importantly, started conversations about recognizing and preventing financial predation. The response was overwhelming. Emily received thousands of messages from survivors of similar abuse, from people who recognized warning signs in their own relationships, from potential victims who'd seen the red flags and gotten out before it was too late. The Grace Lawrence Foundation saw a surge in donations and volunteer applications. Other organizations focused on financial abuse reached out for collaboration. Legislators contacted Emily about potential policy changes to better protect vulnerable people. But the response wasn't universally positive. Michael's family, his father and sister, issued public statements claiming the documentary was biased, that Emily was vindictive, that Michael and Helen had been unfairly portrayed. Some online commenters accused Emily of exploiting her trauma for profit and attention. "How do you handle the criticism?" Isaac asked one evening as they reviewed responses. "By remembering why we did this," Emily said firmly. "The Woodalls hurt dozens of people across 20 years. If even 10 people watch this documentary and recognize similar patterns in their own lives, if even 10 potential victims protected themselves, then the criticism doesn't matter. We created a permanent record that can't be erased or rewritten. That's what matters." One particularly meaningful message came from a woman named Rachel Thornton. "I watched your documentary last night and started crying 20 minutes in. My boyfriend has been exhibiting every warning sign you described, isolating me from friends, gaining access to my finances, making me doubt my own judgment. I thought I was going crazy, that I was the problem. Your documentary helped me see I was being targeted. I left this morning. I'm staying with my sister. I'm safe. Thank you for sharing your story. You saved my life." Emily shared the message with Lily. "This is why we did it, baby. This woman is safe because you were brave enough to find that evidence and because we were brave enough to share what happened." "I'm glad," Lily said simply. "I'm glad something good came from something so bad." The documentary's success also meant increased media attention for Emily personally. She was invited to speak at conferences about financial abuse, to participate in policy discussions, to share her expertise with law enforcement training programs. She accepted some invitations and declined others, learning to balance public advocacy with private healing. One speaking engagement at a law enforcement conference was particularly meaningful. Emily stood before hundreds of detectives, prosecutors, and victim advocates. "Financial predators don't look like criminals," Emily explained. "They look like helpful friends, caring family members, charming romantic partners. They're sophisticated, practiced, and skilled at manipulating systems." Helen Woodall presented herself as a philanthropist for 20 years, while systematically destroying vulnerable women. If you're investigating financial crimes, look for patterns. One victim might seem isolated. Multiple victims with similar stories reveal predatory behavior, she continued. "And please, believe children when they report abuse." Lily tried to tell her school counselor something was wrong at home. Dr. Osei wisely taught her about documentation and evidence, which ultimately saved us. But too often, children's reports are dismissed because adults assume kids don't understand. Kids see things. They know when something is wrong. Give them the tools to document what they're experiencing and take them seriously when they come forward. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, multiple investigators approached with questions about identifying financial predation patterns, about building cases predators couldn't manipulate away, about protecting vulnerable populations more effectively. Emily realized her trauma had given her expertise, hard-won, painful expertise, but valuable nonetheless. She understood how predators operated because she'd survived one. She recognized manipulation tactics because she'd been targeted by them. She could teach others what to look for because she'd learned through terrible experience. This was what transformation looked like, taking the worst thing that had ever happened to her and building something meaningful from it, not minimizing the trauma, not pretending the pain hadn't been real, but refusing to let that pain be the end of the story. One evening, several months after the documentary's release, Emily sat with Isaac on her porch. They'd fallen into this comfortable routine. Isaac would come for dinner several times a week, help Lily with homework, stay for conversations that stretched into evening. Their relationship had deepened naturally, organically, without pressure or expectations. "I have something to tell you," Isaac said, his tone suggesting nervousness. Emily's heart clenched. "What is it?" "I've been offered a position documenting financial crimes for a federal task force. It's steady work, good pay, important cases, but it would mean traveling more, being away for weeks at a time sometimes." Emily processed this, trying to identify her feelings. Disappointment? Yes. But also understanding that Isaac had his own career, his own calling. "That sounds like an incredible opportunity." "I turned it down," Isaac said quietly. "What? Why?" "Because I don't want to leave. I don't want to be away from you and Lily for weeks at a time. Emily, over the past year, you're not just someone I'm helping, someone I'm documenting for work. You're my best friend. You and Lily are my family. The idea of spending weeks away from that, even for important work, feels wrong." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Isaac, you can't turn down career opportunities for us. That's not fair to you." "It's not a sacrifice," Isaac said firmly. "It's a choice. I'm choosing to prioritize what matters most to me, and that's being here, being present, being part of your lives. The task force will find another documentarian. But Emily, you and Lily, you're irreplaceable." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Emily spoke, her voice uncertain. "Isaac, what are we to each other? Because you're not just my friend, you're not just someone who helped me, but I don't know if you want." She trailed off, frustrated. Isaac took her hand gently. "I'm in love with you. I have been for a long time. But I didn't want to pressure you while you were healing, while you were learning to trust again. I figured I'd rather have you in my life as a friend than risk losing you by wanting more than you were ready for." "I'm in love with you too," Emily whispered, "and that terrifies me, because the last time I loved someone, it was a lie. How do I trust this? How do I trust myself?" "Look at what you know about me," Isaac said. "I've been in your life for over a year now. Have I ever lied to you? Have I ever tried to isolate you from friends? Have I ever tried to control your choices or make you doubt yourself? Have I ever asked for anything you weren't ready to give?" Emily thought carefully. "No. You've been honest about everything, even when honesty was uncomfortable. That's not going to change. Emily, I'm not Michael. I don't want your money. I have my own career. I don't want to control you. I love your strength and independence. I don't want you to need me. I want you to choose me freely as an equal partner. The difference between Michael and me is that Michael needed you to be weak so he could exploit you. I love you specifically because you're strong." "I'm not always strong," Emily said. "I still have bad days. I still doubt myself sometimes. I still wake up from nightmares." "Strength isn't the absence of fear or pain," Isaac said gently. "It's continuing to live and love despite them. Emily, you've built an entire foundation while still healing yourself. You've turned your trauma into advocacy. You've raised an extraordinary daughter. That's strength, real strength." Emily looked at this man who'd protected her before they'd met, who'd stood beside her through everything, who'd never demanded more than she could give. She thought about Michael's performance of love versus Isaac's genuine care. "I want to try," Emily said finally, "being together, actually together. But Isaac, I need you to understand that I'm still healing. Some days will be harder than others. Sometimes I'll need space or reassurance or patience. Can you handle that?" "Yes," Isaac said without hesitation. "Whatever you need, whatever pace you need, whatever boundaries you need, we'll figure it out together." They kissed for the first time on Emily's porch, gentle and tentative and full of possibility. When they pulled apart, Emily was crying and smiling simultaneously. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Me too," Isaac said. "Opening your heart after loss is always scary. But Emily, you're worth the risk. You're worth everything." Inside the house, Lily had been supposedly doing homework, but had actually been watching from the window. When Emily and Isaac came inside, Lily grinned widely. Finally, I thought you two would never figure it out. Emily laughed. How long have you been spying? Long enough to know you're both being silly. You've been in love for like a year. I'm glad you finally admitted it. That night, after Lily went to bed, Emily and Isaac talked for hours about what being together would look like. They agreed to move slowly, to communicate openly, to let Lily help set the pace. No rushing into dramatic changes, just allowing what was already there to be acknowledged and developed. This is what healthy relationships look like, Emily marveled. Having actual conversations about expectations and boundaries and needs. Michael never asked what I wanted. He just decided what I should want and manipulated me into believing I wanted it. That's the difference between partnership and manipulation, Isaac agreed. Partners ask, communicate, compromise. Manipulators decide, pressure and control. You'll always know the difference now, Emily. That's one good thing that came from surviving Michael. You can recognize genuine care because you've experienced its opposite. As Isaac left that night, Emily stood in her doorway and watched him drive away, feeling something she'd almost forgotten was possible. Hope for a future that included romantic love without fear, partnership without manipulation, trust rebuilt slowly and authentically. The documentary had exposed the Woodall's crimes to the world, but it had also exposed Emily to possibilities she'd thought Michael had destroyed forever. She could love again. She could trust again. She could build something genuine with someone who saw her strength rather than exploiting her vulnerabilities. The healing wasn't finished, probably wouldn't ever be completely finished, but Emily was learning that healing didn't mean returning to who she'd been before Michael. It meant becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who'd survived the worst and chosen to build something beautiful from what remained. Chapter 8. The Foundation. 1 year after the documentary's premiere, Emily stood in the newly expanded Grace Lawrence Center. What had started as a modest office space had grown into a full facility, occupying an entire building. The ground floor housed reception, consultation rooms, and group therapy spaces. The second floor contained legal offices, financial counseling rooms, and administrative workspace. The third floor was dedicated to training programs and community education. The center's walls were covered with photos, families they'd helped, children who'd found safety, survivors who'd rebuilt their lives. Each photograph represented a story of escape, recovery, transformation. Dr. Yolanda Osei now headed the center's therapy department, leading a team of 6 therapists specializing in trauma recovery. We're booked solid 3 months out, she told Emily during their weekly operational meeting. We're helping over 100 families currently, with waiting lists in every program. Fatima Webb managed the legal services department, which had grown to include 4 full-time attorneys and a network of volunteer lawyers. We've won 17 custody cases this quarter, all situations where controlling partners were using custody threats as leverage to maintain financial control. Isaac ran the center's awareness and education programs. His documentary work had evolved into creating training materials for law enforcement, educational programs for schools, and public awareness campaigns. We're reaching millions now. The documentary continues generating conversations. We're getting invited to train police departments, speak at universities, consult on policy changes. The Foundation's financial situation had stabilized dramatically thanks to Emily's mother's protected inheritance. Emily had put substantial funds into the Foundation while keeping enough to ensure Lily's future security. Additional funding came from donations, both from individuals moved by the documentary and from organizations focused on preventing financial abuse. One afternoon, a young woman named Destiny came to the center. She'd been referred by a domestic violence shelter, escaping a partner who'd isolated her, controlled her finances, and was now fighting for custody of their son purely to maintain power over her. Emily met with her personally. Destiny sat in Emily's office, visibly exhausted, hands shaking as she held a tissue. I watched your documentary, Destiny said quietly. When you described how Michael made you doubt your own judgment, how he positioned himself as the stable one while deliberately making you unstable. That's exactly what Marcus has done to me. He convinced me I was the problem, that I was too emotional, too irrational. Then he'd create situations where I'd react emotionally and use my reactions as proof. Emily recognized the pattern immediately. That's called reactive abuse. He pushed you until you reacted, then used your reaction as evidence of instability. It's a classic manipulation tactic. I thought I was going crazy, Destiny continued. I started recording our conversations because I couldn't trust my own memory. When I played them back, I realized he was rewriting history constantly, claiming he'd never said things he'd clearly said, insisting I'd agreed to things I'd explicitly refused. Without those recordings, I would have believed him. You were smarter than he anticipated, Emily said. Just like my daughter was smarter than Michael and Helen anticipated. Predators underestimate their victims. That's their fatal flaw. Over the next few months, Emily worked closely with Destiny's case. The center's legal team represented her in custody court. The therapy team helped her process trauma and build evidence of psychological abuse. The financial counselors helped her untangle finances Marcus had deliberately complicated to maintain control. It was grueling work. Marcus fought viciously, hiring expensive lawyers, making false accusations, using every tactic Michael had attempted. But Destiny had something Emily had lacked initially: immediate support from people who understood the playbook. The custody hearing came 4 months later. Emily attended to provide support. She watched Destiny present her evidence, recordings of Marcus's manipulation, documentation of his control tactics, testimony from therapists about psychological abuse. She watched Destiny's lawyer systematically dismantle Marcus's false narrative. The judge ruled in Destiny's favor: full custody to Destiny, supervised visitation only for Marcus. As they left the courthouse, Destiny collapsed into Emily's arms, sobbing with relief. "You saved my life," Destiny said. "My son's life. I don't know how to thank you." "Thank me by living well," Emily said. "Thank me by helping the next person who needs it. That's how we change things, one family at a time, building a network of people who refuse to let predators win." These moments, watching families escape abuse, seeing children protected, helping survivors rebuild, this was what transformation looked like. Emily's trauma had taught her to recognize predatory patterns, to understand manipulation tactics, to help others escape situations she'd barely survived. The center helped 43 families in its first year, 78 in its second year, and was on track to help over 100 in year 3. Each family represented a victory, a predator stopped, a cycle broken. But the work was also exhausting. Emily spent days consulting with desperate families, reviewing horrific evidence of abuse, testifying in court cases. Some nights, she'd come home emotionally drained, needing to sit in silence while Lily did homework and Isaac cooked dinner. "You're taking on too much," Isaac said one evening, finding Emily at her desk at midnight reviewing case files. "You can't personally save everyone." "But I can help," Emily insisted. "These people need someone who understands." "You also need to take care of yourself," Isaac said gently. "You can't help others effectively if you're burning out. Emily, you've helped build an incredible organization. You don't have to personally handle every case." He was right. Emily had been operating at unsustainable intensity. She started working with Dr. Osei on setting boundaries, on accepting that she couldn't save everyone, on recognizing that building systems to help people was just as important as individual casework. The foundation expanded services gradually. They added a children's program for kids who'd witnessed parental abuse. They created a financial literacy program, teaching people to recognize and prevent economic exploitation. They established a Speakers Bureau of survivors willing to share their stories. Emily began training other advocates, teaching them to recognize manipulation patterns, to build cases effectively, to support survivors without taking on their trauma as personal burden. She was creating a movement, not just an organization. One afternoon, Joyce Campbell's daughter reached out. Joyce had died before seeing Helen prosecuted, but her daughter wanted to thank Emily. "My mother blamed herself for trusting Helen," Joyce's daughter said. "She died thinking she'd been stupid, weak. Your case, your daughter's courage, the documentary showing Mom wasn't alone. It means everything. Mom's story mattered. Helen faced consequences, not just for what she did to you, but for what she did to Mom and everyone else." These connections between victims across years, this validation of suffering predators, had tried to keep isolated. This was why the work mattered. Every predator depended on victims staying silent, staying ashamed, staying isolated. Every time a survivor spoke up, another predator's power diminished. Emily's personal life was stabilizing alongside her professional work. Her relationship with Isaac had deepened naturally over the past year. They'd moved slowly, carefully, building trust through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. "Do you think you'll marry him?" Lily asked one evening with teenage directness. She was now 13, growing taller, developing her own distinct personality. Emily considered the question carefully. "Eventually, maybe. We're not in any rush. What we have works well." "That makes sense," Lily said, "but I hope you do eventually. He's really good for you, Mama. He makes you laugh, and he never gets weird about you being strong or successful. He just likes you for you." Isaac did appreciate Emily's strength, rather than feeling threatened by it. He celebrated her successes rather than competing with them. He supported her work rather than resenting the time it required. The contrast with Michael couldn't have been more stark. "I think I might marry him too," Emily admitted, "when the time feels right." "You're already sure," Lily said matter-of-factly. "You're just scared, which is normal, Mama. After what Daddy did, being scared is reasonable. But Mr. Isaac has proven himself like 1,000 times. At some point, you're going to have to take the leap." When had Lily become so emotionally intelligent? Emily marveled at her daughter constantly. This child who'd been forced to grow up too fast, but who'd somehow emerged from trauma with empathy, wisdom, and remarkable emotional insight. That evening, Emily sat with Isaac on the porch. "Lily thinks we should get married eventually." Isaac smiled. "Does she now? And what do you think?" "I think she's right. I think I'm ready, or getting close, to make that commitment." "But Isaac, I need you to understand that marriage means something different to me now. I'm not looking for someone to complete me or save me. I can do all of that myself. What I want is partnership, equality, someone who enhances my life without being necessary for my survival." "That's exactly what I want too," Isaac said. "Emily, I don't want to be your rescuer. I want to be your partner, your equal. Someone you choose because you want me, not because you need me." They talked for hours about what marriage would mean, about maintaining individual identities within partnership, about raising Lily together, about building lives that complemented each other without consuming each other. They discussed finances, frankly, agreeing on prenuptial arrangements. They talked about how they'd navigate disagreements, maintain boundaries. "This is what healthy relationships look like," Emily marveled, "having actual conversations about expectations instead of just hoping things work out." "Michael never asked what you wanted because he didn't care," Isaac said. "He had a plan for you. I'm asking what you want because your wants matter to me. Your happiness matters. Your autonomy matters. That's the fundamental difference." Several weeks later, Isaac proposed. Nothing grand, just the two of them on the porch, Lily asleep inside, stars bright overhead. He pulled out a simple but beautiful ring. "Emily Lawrence, you're the strongest person I've ever known. You've survived things that would have destroyed many people. You've built something meaningful from your trauma. You've raised an extraordinary daughter. You've helped hundreds of families, and somehow, despite everything, you've found room in your life for me. I love you. I love Lily. I love the life we're building together. Will you marry me?" Emily looked at this man who'd proven his character through actions, not words, who'd been patient with her healing, respectful of her boundaries, honest about his feelings. "Yes," Emily said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you. Not because I need you, but because I want you. Not because I can't survive alone, but because I'd rather not have to. Yes." They told Lily the next morning. Her response was predictably teenage. "Finally! Can I be the maid of honor?" They planned a small ceremony for several months out. Emily worked with Dr. Osei on processing any remaining fears about marriage, about trusting someone completely, about vulnerability within partnership. "You're not the same person who married Michael," Dr. Osei reminded her. "You've learned to recognize manipulation. You've developed boundaries. You've built a life you're proud of. Isaac isn't entering an empty vessel he can fill. He's joining a fully formed person with her own strength and agency. That's completely different." As the wedding approached, Emily felt remarkably calm. No cold feet, no panic, just certainty that this was right. She was choosing Isaac freely, with full knowledge of what partnership meant, with eyes wide open. The foundation continued thriving. The documentary continued reaching new audiences. Lily continued growing into a remarkable young woman. Emily's life was full of purpose, love, and genuine connection. Everything the Woodalls had tried to destroy rebuilt stronger than before. This was what victory looked like. Not the Woodalls' imprisonment, though that mattered, but Emily's ability to love again, to trust again, to build a life so full and meaningful that her past trauma became just one part of her story rather than its defining feature. She'd survived the worst. Now she was thriving, and that was the ultimate revenge. Chapter 9. The Ceremony. The wedding took place on a bright Saturday afternoon at the Grace Lawrence Center. Emily had chosen the location deliberately. Not a church or hotel, but the place that represented her transformation from victim to survivor to advocate. The center's main hall had been transformed with flowers and simple but beautiful decorations created largely by families the foundation had helped. Over 200 people attended, staff from the center, survivors the foundation had assisted, Emily's friends, Isaac's family, community members who'd supported their work. Lily, now 13 and poised, stood as maid of honor in a deep purple dress she'd chosen herself that complemented her mother's emerald green gown. Emily had debated wearing white, the traditional symbol that felt absurd given everything she'd been through, and ultimately chosen a color that represented growth and life instead of false innocence. She wasn't a blushing bride entering marriage naively. She was a woman who'd survived hell, rebuilt her life, and chosen partnership with eyes wide open. As Emily walked down the aisle, Lily at her side, not giving her away but walking with her, she looked at Isaac standing at the front and felt overwhelming gratitude. Not that he'd saved her, but that he'd chosen to walk beside her, to be her partner, to love her without trying to diminish or control her. The ceremony was officiated by Judge Reeves, the woman who'd presided over Helen and Michael's sentencing. She'd become a friend over the past year, impressed by Emily's work and eager to support the foundation. "Emily and Isaac have both known loss," Judge Reeves said. "Emily through betrayal and trauma, Isaac through illness and death. They've both experienced the worst of human cruelty and grief, yet they stand here today choosing love anyway, choosing partnership anyway, choosing to believe in possibilities despite having every reason to be cynical. That takes more courage than most people will ever understand." The vows Emily and Isaac had written were simple but profound. Emily spoke first, her voice clear and steady. "Isaac, You entered my life when I was at my lowest point. You saw me confused and frightened, and you never once treated me as less than whole. You've been patient with my healing, respectful of my boundaries, honest about your feelings. You've supported my work without trying to control it. You've loved my daughter without trying to replace her father. You've proven through consistent actions that you are who you appear to be. Today, I choose you. Not because I need you to complete me, but because my life is better with you in it. I promise to be your partner, your equal, your friend. I promise to communicate honestly, to respect your autonomy, to support your dreams. I promise to choose you every day, deliberately and freely, for as long as we both shall live. Isaac's response carried equal weight. Emily, you're the strongest person I've ever known. You've survived things that would have destroyed many people. You've built something meaningful from trauma. You've created space for love in a heart that had every reason to close. Watching you heal, watching you help others, watching you refuse to let your past define your future. It's been the greatest privilege of my life. I promise to honor your strength while supporting you through moments of vulnerability. I promise to be honest, even when it's difficult. I promise to choose you daily, to build a partnership of equals, to love you for exactly who you are. Judge Reeves pronounced them married. As Emily and Isaac kissed, the gathering erupted in applause and cheers. Lily hugged them both, crying happy tears. You're officially my family now, Mr. Isaac. I mean, you already were, but now it's legal. The reception was joyful and meaningful. Survivors from the foundation shared stories of escape and recovery. Destiny, whose custody case Emily had personally supported, gave a toast about how Emily's courage had inspired her own. Dr. Osei offered a toast that made Emily cry. To Emily, who transformed her pain into purpose. To Isaac, who loved someone strong enough not to need him. To Lily, who proved that courage comes in small packages. To all of us who've survived things we shouldn't have had to survive. May we keep building lives so beautiful that our past trauma becomes just backstory rather than our whole story. Even Jasmine was there, though she stayed in the back. Emily had debated inviting her, ultimately deciding that Jasmine's journey toward redemption deserved acknowledgement, even if their friendship would never be restored. Midway through the reception, Emily approached her. "Thank you for coming," Emily said. "Thank you for inviting me," Jasmine replied quietly. "I know I don't deserve to be here, but I'm grateful to witness your happiness." "You made terrible choices," Emily said honestly, "but you've also worked hard to atone for them. That matters, even if forgiveness is still complicated." As evening fell, Emily stood with Isaac and Lily, looking at the celebration around them. Survivors laughing together, children playing safely, community members supporting each other. "Are you happy, Mama?" Lily asked. Emily pulled her daughter close, feeling Isaac's arm around her shoulders. "Yes, baby, actually genuinely happy. Not just surviving or getting by, but thriving." "Good," Lily said. "You deserve it. We all do." The party continued late. Emily danced with Isaac, with Lily, with survivors she'd helped, with staff from the foundation. She laughed more that night than she had in years, felt lighter than she'd felt since before Michael had entered her life. As the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Emily took a moment alone in the foundation's gallery, the wall of photographs showing families they'd helped. Each face represented someone who'd escaped abuse, rebuilt their life, found safety. "This is why it mattered," Emily whispered. "This is why we fought back, not just for us, but for all of you." Isaac found her there. "You okay?" "More than okay. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do, with exactly the people I'm meant to be with." "Isaac, for years Michael made me feel like I was never enough. But that was his manipulation. The truth is I've always been enough. I just needed to survive long enough to remember that." "You are extraordinary," Isaac said simply. "Not because you survived Michael, because of who you are, your strength, your compassion, your refusal to let trauma destroy you. They drove home that night, to the house that was now officially theirs together. Lily fell asleep in the car, exhausted. Isaac carried her inside and tucked her into bed while Emily changed out of her wedding dress. Later, sitting together on the porch under stars, Emily reflected on everything that had brought her to this moment. The trauma and pain, yes, but also the courage, the healing, the transformation. "Do you ever think about them?" Isaac asked quietly. "Michael and Helen? About what they're doing in prison?" "Less and less," Emily admitted. "Sometimes I remember something particularly cruel they did and feel a flash of anger. Sometimes I'm still processing trauma in therapy. But mostly, they're just people who tried to hurt me and failed. They don't occupy space in my head anymore. I've filled that space with better things, with Lily and you and the foundation and all the survivors we're helping." "That's the best revenge," Isaac said. "Not their suffering, your joy." "Exactly." Emily leaned against her husband and felt peace. Not the absence of pain or perfect healing, but the presence of purpose, love, and the knowledge that she'd survived the worst and chosen to build something beautiful from what remained. Inside, Lily slept safely. The foundation would open Monday to help more families. The documentary continued reaching new audiences. Emily's life was full of meaning and connection and genuine love. Everything the Woodalls had tried to destroy, rebuilt stronger and better than before. This was victory. This was justice. This was living well as the ultimate revenge. Chapter 10. The Empire of Her Own. 3 years after the wedding, Emily stood at the podium of a national conference on preventing financial exploitation. The audience of over 1,000 people, law enforcement, victim advocates, social workers, attorneys, listened intently as she presented findings from the Grace Lawrence Foundation's work. "In the past 3 years, our foundation has assisted over 300 families," Emily said confidently. "We've identified specific warning signs that predict potential financial predation with high accuracy. We've developed intervention protocols that increase successful escapes significantly. Most importantly, we've created a network of survivors supporting survivors, breaking the isolation predators depend on." She advanced her slides. "Financial predators aren't random criminals. They're strategic, sophisticated, and often operate within families or intimate relationships. They identify vulnerabilities and exploit them systematically. But they also make predictable mistakes. They underestimate their victims. They become overconfident. They document their own crimes." Emily thought about Lily's courage, about Michael and Helen's fatal arrogance. "Our work focuses on 3 areas: prevention through education, intervention through legal and therapeutic support, and accountability through prosecution and public exposure. All 3 are necessary." The presentation was well received. Afterward, dozens of professionals approached with questions, requests for training materials, offers of collaboration. The Foundation's model was being replicated in other cities. That evening, Emily returned to the hotel room she was sharing with Isaac and Lily. They'd made this trip a family vacation, combining Emily's conference with exploring a new city together. "How did it go?" Isaac asked. "Really well. I think we're making real systemic change, not just helping individual families." Lily looked up from homework, now 15, a sophomore volunteering at the foundation every weekend. "Mama, my history teacher asked if you'd come speak to our class about your experience. She said it connects to our unit on justice." Emily smiled. "I'd be honored. What angle does she want me to focus on?" "How individuals can fight back against powerful people who seem untouchable. How evidence and courage and perfect timing can change everything." The foundation had continued growing. They now operated in 7 cities with plans to expand further. They'd helped over 300 families escape financial predation and abuse. Emily's personal life had also flourished. Her marriage to Isaac remained strong, built on genuine partnership. They'd navigated normal relationship challenges with honesty and respect. No manipulation, no game playing, just two adults working together. Lily was thriving academically and personally. She'd joined debate team, volunteered at the foundation, maintained close friends. She was in therapy occasionally, but Dr. Ose reported Lily was one of the most emotionally healthy teenagers she'd worked with. One Saturday, Emily received a letter from the prison where Michael was serving his sentence. She debated not opening it, but curiosity won. Emily, I know I have no right to contact you. I know my apologies are worthless. But I've had years to think, and I need you to know something. You were right. I underestimated you. I saw kindness and trust and assumed they meant weakness. That was my catastrophic mistake. You're the strongest person I've ever known. I testified against my mother not for a reduced sentence, but because you deserved to see her pay for everything. Making sure she faced maximum consequences was the only decent thing I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I watch news coverage of your foundation, read about families you're helping, and I realize you took the worst thing I ever did and turned it into something good. I hope Lily is thriving. I hope you're happy. You deserved better than what I gave you. Michael. Emily read it twice, then filed it away. She didn't respond. Michael's redemption wasn't her concern. His regret didn't erase what he'd done or obligate her to grant forgiveness. She mentioned the letter to Dr. Ose. How do you feel about it? Indifferent, mostly. He's just someone who hurt me and is now facing consequences. His guilt is his burden, not mine to absolve. I've moved past needing anything from him. I've built a life he's completely irrelevant to. That's real healing, Dr. Ose said with approval. Not forgiveness necessarily, but genuine disinterest in your abuser's inner life. The foundation celebrated its 3rd anniversary with a gala highlighting impact. 300 families helped, 17 predators prosecuted, over 5,000 people trained, millions in stolen assets recovered. Emily gave a speech. We exist because predators exist. We thrive because survivors are stronger than anyone gives them credit for. We grow because communities can protect vulnerable people. We win because silence protects predators, but exposure destroys their power. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Emily looked at Lily and Isaac in the front row, at Dr. Ose and Fatima, and all the people who'd helped build this organization, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Afterward, a young woman approached. My name is Sophie. I watched your documentary when I was 17. My boyfriend was showing warning signs. Because I'd watched your story, I recognized the pattern. I left before it escalated. I'm finishing college now, planning to become a victim advocate. You saved my life. This was why everything mattered. This woman, alive and thriving, because Emily had been brave enough to share her story publicly. That night, Emily stood in the foundation's photo gallery, looking at faces of families they'd helped. 300 families, 300 stories of escape and recovery. Mama, are you crying? Lily asked, finding Emily alone. Happy tears, Emily said, just thinking about how far we've come. Grandma Grace would be proud, Lily said softly. She would. She'd be proud of you too, baby. Your courage started all of this. Isaac joined them, wrapping his arms around both. Ready to go home? Yes, Emily said. Home. As they drove toward the house that was theirs, Emily reflected on the life she'd built from ashes. Helen had thought Emily was weak, had targeted her as an easy mark. Helen had been catastrophically wrong. Emily had survived systematic poisoning. She'd escaped a custody battle designed to steal her daughter. She'd exposed a criminal conspiracy. She'd built a foundation helping hundreds. She'd created a documentary reaching millions. She'd raised an extraordinary daughter. She'd found love again. This was her empire, not wealth or status or power over others, but impact, meaning genuine connection. Helen's empire had been built on silence, isolation, and fear. Emily's was built on truth, community, and courage. Helen was in prison, bitter and isolated. Emily was free, loved, purposeful, thriving. That was justice. That was victory. That was revenge in its purest form, not the destruction of enemies, but the construction of a life so beautiful that those enemies became utterly irrelevant. Emily stood in her doorway and felt peace. Michael and Helen Woodall had tried to take everything. Instead, they'd revealed strength she hadn't known she possessed. They'd taught her what genuine love looked like by showing her its counterfeit. They'd given her purpose by creating pain she could help others avoid. Their lives were over, decades in prison, reputation destroyed. Emily's life was just hitting stride, her 40s stretching ahead full of possibility, work that mattered, people she loved. She'd won, not by destroying them, but by building something they could never create, a life full of authentic love, genuine purpose, and unshakable knowledge that she was stronger than anyone who'd tried to break her. This was the empire she built, and it was everything.